This hour of the Meridian Wealth Management pregame show is brought to you in part by Royal Cadillac Buick GMC, Mesquite Valley Growers, Lexus of Tucson, Desert Diamond Casinos, Jag Furrier Tire and Auto Care, the Polston Results Team with Keller Williams, Southern Arizona, O'Reilly Chevrolet, Picture Rocks Cooling, Heating and Plumbing, Cox Business, Crest Insurance Group, and by Meridian Wealth Management. Wealth well managed, life well lived.
Live from the University of Arizona on the campus of the Arizona Wildcats, this is the Meridian Wealth Management pregame show from the mall with all the tailgaters on the corner of University and Campbell. We are ready to start talking football with you. I'm Rich Herrera. Thanks for joining us. We count down to Arizona taking on the Colorado Buffalo. I'm joined today by, of course, the captain, Kelvin Ifon, and pinch hitting today. Pinch hitting day. We said, you know what? Glenn's taking the day off. We need to go big today. So who else are we going to go find? Other than Sweet D David Adams, legendary Arizona running back, joining us here on the program. David, thank you so much for joining us. We've had you on the program, but now you're stepping into the big boy's chair, taking over, doing 3 hours of pregame with us.
I'm trying not to put any pressure on you guys to fire Glenn and hire me. So.
All right, so what happens when it's next man up, Kelvin?
Hey, you know what happens is, next Wildcat make a play.
Right.
And so it's always about the next man up, and that's what it is. Wildcat, as soon as Glenn couldn't be here, him and myself, first person we thought of was David. I mean, because we just know what type of guy he is, his information on the program, and just who he was as a player. So, no, it's always about the next guy up. That's Wildcat football.
Well, welcome to the team. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, let's take a look back. Last time we got together, Arizona, tough game on the road against the California Golden Bears, and it was the Jaden Ott show up in the Bay Area as he ran rampant and keyed the Cal Golden Bears to a big win over the Cats.
Now Plummer out of the shotgun. Ott to his right in the backfield. Ott will get the handoff, looking around the left-hand side. Finds a hole. He may be gone. Ott out to midfield. One man to catch him. Dodges that. Down to the 20. 10, 5. Touchdown, California. 73 yards for Ott. Found a hole on that left side. Had the angle. Next thing you know, he's in the end zone. Ott back in as the running back, and he has been money today for Cal Cats. Bringing pressure. The pitch will go to Ott, left-hand side. Got a hole. Gets around a man. Open field. He may be gone. Ott to the Arizona 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, and touchdown. Wow. Well, 73 yards earlier.
Yeah.
Not quite that, but close enough, and that will put it away.
Yeah, that put a cap on it, and Ott is a big-time player. That's all you can say about that. They gave him the ball. He's been out of the game, and they've been kind of muddling, and they gave him the ball, and he just like that, split the defense and just took it to the house.
72 yards.
As a running back, I think the two of you have to appreciate the show that Jaden Ott put on as a Wildcat. You got a grimace watching him run up and down the field, Kelvin.
Yeah, as a Wildcat, man, it's tough to see. I mean, we're known for having, great defensive plays. That's one of the reasons why I wanted Jake Fisher on. We bring it on some Byron Evans. We have a great linebacker tradition. We have great tacklers, from the program. So now it's tough to see a guy going off like that, especially you're the opposing running back.
Well, I think one of the things that, from my mentality, was you never want to be outrushed by the other guy, because that means it's on you. So my thing is that if I outrush the other team, hey, okay, I did my part of putting a win together. And when they outrush you to that degree, one person, it's going to be a long, long night, and it was, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, when you can't stop the run, everything else works. Everything.
We're going to talk a lot about Arizona and what Colorado's going to try to come in and do today. So let's get to it. Let's start taking a look at the game today. It's brought to you by The Window Depot.
It's time to take our first look at today's game. Brought to you by The Window Depot. Lowest prices and biggest inventory. Shop thewindow.com. Here is Rich Herrera.
All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see today as we take our first look at the ball game. You know what? Jed Fish said it after the ball game. Johnny Nansen, defensive coordinator, talked a lot about it. Gap integrity has been a big issue for the Arizona Wildcats. They're going to have to shore that up today. Here's Jed Fish talking about last week's ball game and the gap integrity issues that were so big for the Arizona Wildcats. Here's Jed Fish cut two.
It's usually the same thing, which would be tackling, would always be the starting point. It's that first tackle. that breaking through. But I think the other part of it is that we weren't necessarily in our gaps. We weren't as gap sound as we would like to be, and all of a sudden you have two guys in one gap and nobody in the other gap, and next thing you know, that run can go. And when you're a one-gap defense, meaning everybody's responsible for one gap, if you have two guys in one gap,
10 seconds.
That's where you can kind of get caught. And that's really what got us both in the North Dakota State game and then the Cal game.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, that's defensive line penetration, eating up those blocks, where the guys can get more downhill to make some of those plays so they can have a cleaner picture. And also, it's the DBs and everybody just fitting in. I mean, you have to make a play. You have to mentally be in the right gap. You can't, at this point, be, in the wrong place. You just have to be in the right place. You have to be able to depend on your teammate next to you.
What it comes down to is trust. All week, we were having issues with me trusting the guy next to me. So, obviously, in the game, I'm not going to trust you either. So, I'm going to try and take my gap and your gap because during the week, you weren't preparing yourself correctly to where I felt comfortable enough to let you do your job. And that's what it comes down to. I got to trust, offensively and defensively. If you trust your offensive line, you just keep running, and then the hole opens up. If you trust the guy next to you when you're on defense, you don't have to try and play two gaps. You don't have to try and be the hero.
Right.
You do your job, and everything is fine. But that tells me that the week of practice was very tough.
And it goes back to something that we've talked about with Jaden DeLauro. We've seen him where we say, hey, don't throw the hero ball. That's someone who's trying to make something happen. Obviously, listening to David Adams, some of these defensive linemen are trying to play hero instead of taking care of what's assigned to them.
Yeah, and it's not just the defensive line, it's the linebackers, the DBs. Everybody are missing their gaps. Everybody is, sometimes out of place. And one guy out of place and on the defensive side of the ball, it could be a home run. And again, I just think it has just a lot to do with, as he said, that trust of understanding that you have to be where you supposed to be. That is just a part of the game. When we can't trust you to be where you're supposed to be, that's when it's time to start looking for another guy.
Well, that's what happened in practice. In practice, you were never there in practice, so why would I think you're going to be there in the game? And in practice, a lot of times you have those little deals going. Hey, man, we're running this sweep, man. Let me pin you in. So the coach don't jump on you.
Yeah.
Right.
Those little things that happen. And there's not as much fight because I know that I don't want you jumped on. So what I do is I make it easier on you, and I let you push me down, and this is what happens. You can't make deals with another team.
No, absolutely. In fact, Johnny Nansen talked about this, the defense coordinator for the University of Arizona, talked about having to go back to fundamentals this week in practice. Here's Nansen, cut 3.
Today we're going back to fundamentals, going back to like spring ball, going back to tackling, going back to, all the little things, take on blocks, shedding blocks, using your hands,
10 seconds.
Make sure your eyes in the right place, footwork. It all starts there. When things are not going right, it's not to blame, it's to go back to the fundamentals of the game and doing things right.
The interesting thing about that comment is that every year, every coach, after either a bad win or a terrible loss, they say go back to the fundamentals. A lot of times, it's not necessarily the fundamental. It's the belief in the philosophy. You got me doing stuff that is not within my talent or I just don't believe in. So that's why I try to swim when I'm supposed to not swim block or something like that. It's terrible.
And so what are you saying is just like when you keep hearing Fish saying that him and Delora are still learning each other, the defensive coordinator and the linebackers and the whole defense is still learning him. This is his, fourth game with these guys? Fourth,
Right.
Yeah, going into fifth game, I guess you say. So they're still learning each other, and you're learning what defenses your guys can do. Because as a coach, you can come in and say, I want to run a cover 2, or I want to run a man-to-man, but my personnel might say I have to do something else.
And the difference between the National Football League and college is, in the NFL, I'll just find people that can run the cover 2. College, you have a certain set of guys in your roster. There are no free agents that I could bring in. There's nobody I can elevate from the practice squad to come in there, so you have to make those adjustments as well. Now, there's folks out here tailgating and looking at their radio and going, wait a minute, David Adams, Kelvin Efon, what do you mean going back to fundamentals at this point of the season? Don't you know the fundamentals? So Jed Fish was asked, what are you working on? What do fundamentals mean at this point of the season? Here's Jed cut 4.
Yeah, I think that is definitely said often.
We've got about a minute and 30 seconds, fellas.
Okay.
If you go back to all 12 of their press conferences or all 17 in the NFL, you're always going to find one or two of them that the comment's going to be made. We're going to get back to fundamentals or back to basics. I think what happens sometimes where the game gets away from you is when you're, during a week, so concerned about defending plays that you're talking more about the play itself than how you defend it. Because you defend it by playing with better pad level. You defend it by playing physical. You defend it by being fundamentally sound. You don't necessarily defend it by saying, we're going to call this defense. But some of us get, we all do it at different times throughout years that you say, all right, well, this is the play. This is how you defend it. This is the best call for this play. And you don't spend enough time focusing in on, that true, hey, we got to beat a double team. We have to figure out a way to add a
10 seconds.
pass rush. And that's kind of when you bring yourself back to, okay, all's good. Now let's figure out a way to add an 8-minute individual period where we can talk about defeating a block.
And he's saying basically, so Wildcat got to make a play at the end of the day, because you could draw up the best defense in the world and have the guy right there ready to go, but the guy have to make a play. And one of the things that we did during our time, and I'm sure y'all did during y'all time, was we went ones against ones. I mean, even if it was 4, even if it's 5 games into the season, what are you going to do? Go out losing, or are you going to show your team that we got to scrap? So ones against ones means starters versus starters. And that'll toughen up your team regardless, because who want to be seeing someone every day in the hallways, in the locker room that's pancaking them? So that defense is coming hard, so it make you a hard-edged team.
The key thing is fundamentals is an answer. Because if I say – If I'm a mechanic and I say something carburetor and the majority of people don't know what that is, I'm giving them an answer.
Right.
Fundamentals is just an answer that buys you time where everybody says, yeah, it's the fundamentals. No, you know the fundamentals by now. The problem is your execution. That's the difference. You're not executing what you know.
Let me follow up on something execution-wise, because one of the other big things that Arizona needs to shore up is tackling. Fundamental tackling. Here's Jed Fish talking about tackling drills at this point of the season. Here's Jed Cut 5.
Yeah, so we do tackling drills in practice, but we don't tackle to the ground in practice for that exact reason, Brian, that you really, at this point in the season, you're in week 5 to start tackling guys to the ground other than our basics period at the end with our younger players that aren't playing the games. We really can't do that. But what we feel that we needed to emphasize more of is more tackling drills. So it's not just going to be one period. It'll be 2 periods a day.
10 seconds.
Where really the key of tackling is body position. And if we can continue to emphasize being in the right body position, then I think we'll do a better job of getting them down.
I think the problem is that you play like you practice. And if you practice just grabbing somebody and holding them up, that's exactly what you're going to do in the game. You cannot just elevate yourself to a whole nother level because it's game time. No, you practice all week, grabbing them, holding them, and they grabbed this guy, they held him, and he ran for 1,000,000 yards.
All right, body position, Kelvin.
Yeah, body position means, you want to get the guy where you're either forcing him back inside, and if you're an outside guy, you're inside guy, you squaring him up, and being, taking this guy down. So body position is just putting yourself in a position to where you're in between him and the next yard that he's trying to get. But at the end of the day, to me, I always say this. It's about the Jims and the Joes. Coach Tommy used to always say that. Anybody that plays sports, it's about the guys that are playing. And after so much time, you got to start giving other guys a chance. So that's why I commend them for putting Manu in and giving him a chance, right? But again, you're talking about a guy that, that should he be playing this year? Is he a guy that's ready to go? And that's
young
where
players.
we're at. That's where we're at. Right.
It's on the job training.
Right. On the job training.
Here's
with that.
The thing. You got a scout team for a reason. Scout team means the odds of you playing are slim to none.
Okay, wait a second. When we talk about scout team, that means when it's Arizona's #1 defense, they're going up against the scout team. They're not going up against Jaden DeLaura. They're not going up against Cowing. They're going up against the red shirt, the freshmen, the walk-ons that are getting their opportunities in there. That's one where maybe you can hit a walk-on.
If you're vulnerable.
Well, it's not maybe. That's what they're there for.
Okay.
And in the pros, you bring in X amount of people,
Practice squad.
and you know, okay, we're bringing in 95 people. We only got 53. They have a number in their mind of the people that are not going to make
Their
the team.
camp meet.
But exactly. And that's exactly the way it's got to be here. I mean, they may not be camp meet, so to speak, but they're not going to play this season.
But they have a role to play.
Exactly.
And with the issue of tackling, is 2 periods enough? I mean,
you went from 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
2 periods.
Well,
I mean,
and again, this is something, you
more-
look to see what side of the ball or what side of the ball carrier is the head on for some of the guys tackling. Are they trying to tackle them rugby style and where your head is behind them and you grab onto them and try to roll them over, or are we going to see somebody pop somebody and knock them down and wrap?
My thing is, and we talked about this earlier, hitting and tackling. Tackling is just to bring somebody down. Hitting is to send a message.
Yes.
You were talking about that last week, Kelvin.
You hit somebody and send a message. They don't do the spin out.
They're thinking about it.
They ain't spinning out of that.
Jade Knott last week looked awfully comfortable, right?
He never got knocked down.
So we'll see today, as Johnny Nansen said, hey, listen, I have to teach better on run defense. Here's Johnny Nansen, cut 6.
I didn't do a good job, man, preparing our guys. There was a lot of things that are fixable on tape. We weren't in place where we needed to be, and obviously that comes from me. I got to teach it better. We got to have a better plan moving forward,
About 10 seconds.
Yards. That's the first time in a long time for me. I don't even remember the last time I gave up that many yards. So I got to go back to drawing boards and make sure we're on the same page.
All right, so that's going to be one of the big challenges for the Arizona Wildcats today, and that's our first look at the ball game brought to you by The Window Depot.
That's our first look at the game, brought to you by the Window Depot. Lowest prices and biggest inventory. Shop thewindow.depot.com. This is Wildcats Radio 1290.
All right, we're getting closer and closer to game time. 6:30 is the kickoff. The Buffaloes in town to take on the Arizona Wildcats. What else is coming up on our pregame show? Let's take a look at the Right Way Rundown.
Let's take a look at the Right Way Rundown and see what's coming up on our pregame. Heating, cooling, and plumbing. Doing things the right way.
All right, coming up here on our pregame show, David Adams, of course, sitting in today for Glenn Howell. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to go in depth more about this gap integrity with Coach Al Borges. I had him on the afternoon show this week, and we're going to take a little excerpt of that and have the guys explain and go down the rabbit hole talking about gap integrity and what Arizona needs to do against Colorado. Also coming up on the program, we got a couple special guests coming up, guys.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have Jake Fisher join us, linebacker. We're going to talk about what it means to be an Arizona linebacker the next hour. And
Byron Evans.
Byron Evans is going to stop by the program as well. And then later in the captain's corner,
got Chuck Levy, man, Mr. Kill Miami.
Yeah. And he's going to be here on set with us
He's
here
a
at
great
the mall.
guy.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a great
Oh,
guy.
yeah.
All right, so all that coming up on the Right Way Rundown. Coming up next, we're going to go in the huddle with Glenn Howell. Now, Glenn's not here, so I'm pinch hitting with Al Borges, and I'm going to ask the running backs to explain what happens when gap integrity is broken. We're going to get into all of that coming up. I'm Rich Herrera, along with Captain Kelvin Efon, Sweet D, David Adams, sitting in today for Glenn Howell. We're counting down to the kickoff, 6:30, right here on Wildcats Radio 1290.
Bear down, Wildcats fans. This is the Meridian Wealth Management pregame show on Wildcats Radio 1290. Brought to you by Meridian Wealth Management. Wealth well managed, life well lived. This is the home of the Arizona Wildcats. Wildcats Radio 1290.
Do you own your home? You may qualify for a cash-out refinance. Cash for home renovations, paying debt, or for whatever you need most.